Hi everyone, it's Yvonne here with Secure Yourself Consulting, where our primary mission is to consult, educate, and provide individuals with tools to increase and leverage financial literacy to not only save money, but to build wealth. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Secure Yourself Co. And we are back again with Justin Banks, a mental health advocate, as we cover candid topics with our Wealth and Wellness Wednesday. This week, we are talking about unhealthy coping behaviors. We're going to discuss what those look like, and more importantly, what that looks like when we're talking about new beginnings and creating a new normal. So to kick it off, I definitely want to pass it off to Justin to not only do an introduction, but then lead the discussion on what unhealthy coping behaviors look like within that mental health segment.
For sure. So when it comes to like unhealthy coping behaviors, number one, we all have them. You know what I mean? We all have those different vices, things that we know we shouldn't do, but we do anyway. And when I like to go deep into what coping mechanisms are, there is ways that we try to get over our feelings. And I think that it tells us naturally, we as human beings, we want to be happy. We don't want to have the stress. We want to have those good feelings and emotions and really have joy. I think that's what we're meant to have as humans, but you need that toolkit. You need those skills and techniques to get you in that direction naturally. It's not just gonna just always happen like that. So when it comes to doing it from the unhealthy perspective, of course, it comes from our environment. And the quick ones that we always talk about is, maybe smoking cigarettes or alcohol, compulsive eating, or as you would know, compulsive buying. Got a lot of information on that. But then it gets like kind of a step deeper. Like, what about avoidance? Anytime stress comes, are you someone that always runs from it all the time? Or do you use promiscuous behavior? It can even go there. Like when you're always feeling down or stressed, do you try to find comfort with someone else, who could be, just as toxic? And yeah, and the last thing when it comes to those coping behaviors is a lot of times we don't just have one. We might have multiples. Mm-hmm. And what happens is you're sick of digging the hole that you're in right now. And we think, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not going to think about this. Then you move on. Okay, let me just eat to make myself feel better. But now you're digging a whole nother hole. So now you have multiple holes that you got to dig yourself out of. And when I talk to people about this, whether it be young kids or adults, when they're kind of in those moods, they always say, if it ain't kill me today, I ain't going to trip about it. If I ate today, nothing happened, I'm going to just keep going. But they don't understand that those repercussions only need to happen once. You only need a heart attack once, cancer once, COVID once, you know what I mean, for that to affect you. So you always have to know whatever action that you have is going to have a reaction in the future. So you want whatever you cope with to have a positive outcome for your future.
Yeah, that's good. I like how you brought in vices. I recently, throughout kind of like just Googling and research, I saw like a article that says, what's your vice? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's just like one of those things that, sometimes you don't even recognize that some of the things that you're doing is actually feeding into, maybe an unhealthy coping behavior, or that's what your vice is. I guess from a financial implication, when we're talking about unhealthy coping behaviors, everything that you spoke on really relates to financial stress as well, or Absolutely. Financial unhealthy coping behaviors. That goes into overspending. It's very easy to overspend when you're not tracking anything to begin with. It goes into anxiety, when you talked about that avoidance factor. When you don't have control of something, that causes you anxiety, and typically you're going to avoid it. Yes. That comes into emotional and like that mental space when you're financially stressed, or you have financial unhealthy behaviors, because it's like now you see everything around you, but you can't play a part in it because you don't have a solid foundation to begin with. Right. And so I think, once we spoke about this on the last session, where it's like the first thing that you really need to do is acknowledge those unhealthy coping behaviors, acknowledge Absolutely. Your vice, talk to somebody, take inventory and accountability of what is going right and what is going wrong. And then the other two is really plan. Is be dedicated to that plan. And lastly, budget.
Yes.
Like from a financial perspective, I focus on budget before anything else when I talk to people about their finances.
Mm.
Because if you can't drill down into your spending habits, but you telling me everything else that you want to do, we need to start from scratch. We need
Right.
to understand that you have good spending habits, that you have great, whether we call it coping behaviors or not,
Mm.
that's your spending habits. If you're spending more than you are bringing in, first off, you're not financially secure. And second off, that's a red flag, because somewhere, somehow, that means that your credit utilization is high because you're
Mm.
using money on a credit that you're going to try to pay off, and that just creates that hamster cycle.
Yes.
So I kind of wanted to kind of like get your feedback on some of those implications as well, and then how we can create, better beginnings, a new normal when we're talking about, transferring some of those unhealthy coping behaviors into something that will be more beneficial to an individual.
Yeah, well, you gave out a lot of gems in that. Sometimes people don't even know that what they're doing is them coping. Adults have no idea that even though I'm eating all the time, you don't know that you're actually trying to cope with your feelings. And for you to recognize that, that's the most important thing. That's the first step, in that right direction. Then it comes just to analyzing, okay, what are like the symptoms and like what are the causes of those symptoms? So when you talked about it from a financial aspect, yes, I'm spending so much and I'm not financially secure, but why is that? Why do I keep going to spending to make myself feel better? But not understanding that, okay, you might be okay for this given point, but as soon as you see that your credit is super low, now you've added a whole nother stress to your life. And stress in itself, no matter the stress, mental, physical, or financial stress, is deadly. If you're worrying about your money all the time, that does harm your body. It can really, destroy you. So you have to be aware of that. So what I try to tell folks when it comes to, sometimes you're just gonna go to your vice. Look, I can't help it. Like I gotta eat something. I gotta do that. So what I try to tell people is have multiple outlets. Because an issue might be so bad, like, look, this not gonna work. This little
Yeah, this food not helping.
I'm different. So that's okay. But as long as you have different outlets for, okay, person stressing me out at the job, I'm used to this. Let me just go get a little walk on my lunch break or something to get myself right before I come back. I sit in the last session. I like to work out in the morning before my day starts. So I'm already got those stress reducing hormones flowing. So I'm already prepared for what the day is going to bring me for the most part. You know what I mean? And then when it comes to just trying to make yourself better, we need to normalize that, stress is real, and then getting help for that stress is real too. So when we talk about symptoms, those are like the surface areas. But then you have to analyze what's beneath that surface. But generally, what's beneath the surface is what causes it. You might see grass growing, but it's the dirt, it's the soil, it's all the sun, it's the things underneath it that really makes those things grow and those things happen. So for my particular life, when I was super stressed or super anxious about my own health or things of that sort, I'm always going to the hospital. I'm doing all these different things, and then nothing is really wrong with me. And then if I would go to the doctor, I would give them all these symptoms, and they would tell me, okay, we're just going to give you a gambit of blood tests for all these different illnesses. And with an anxious mind, you're assuming that you're going to have either one or multiple of those, so you're even more stressed out. So these are all symptoms. These are all the things that are on the surface. But once I really did my work and started talking to professionals about it, analyzing myself, I saw that, okay, seeing what my dad went through growing up, like from as early as 6, seeing him in and out of the hospital, seeing him in multiple situations where you think, okay, this might be it. I might lose him this time. So it's like seeing someone get shot every other week or every other year and they're in the hospital. That's an ace. Those are traumatic situations. So I analyzed that and say, okay, I was so worried about his health that I don't want the same thing to happen to me. And once I analyzed that and started focusing on what was real, that mindfulness, I knew that I was in a better situation. And if I'm scared about something, I can cope with it with exercise or something like that. So not to talk too much, but you do need that, that analyzation of your own life and what brought you to this point to kind of make you better. So you got to face some hard alleys, some shadows. But once you face it, you realize that you're stronger than all of those situations
So
anyway.
that was really good. I wanted to highlight a few areas that you spoke on that kind of resonated, which the first one was the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so crucial with anything that you are doing that's going to cause growth.
Yes.
So anytime you're trying to grow as an individual, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, all of the above, or just trying to practice mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
it's really getting down to that root cause.
Yes.
And exploring those root causes, they are not going to be the most pretty.
Not at all.
And I definitely liked how you tied that in as well, because it may not look pretty. However, once you identify it, I think that's the most powerful thing that a person can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you identify something, whether it is good for you or whether it is bad for you, you know how to channel that. And channel, like, okay, this may not be the best thing for me. How can I make it better? Because now you have explored and, what did you say, analyze that root
Yes.
cause.
Yep.
And then the next thing that you spoke on, which we spoke previously in another session, it was our first session when we talked about those adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
Sometimes those ACEs are really the root cause of a lot of things that we partake in a lot of our healthy coping behaviors, if we think about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a youth, you formulate what this world is going to look like around your environment, subconsciously or consciously,
Right.
especially when you're a child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get older, that's when you have more exposure, you have more experiences, when you're able to realize, like, wow, when you talked about some of those things that, possibly could happen, like, hey, going back and forth to the doctor, like, okay, everybody doesn't do that.
Right.
Why is it that, we did that? Or even if you grow up in an urban area, a lot of things that are showcased on the news that happen in some of the underrepresented neighborhoods, that doesn't happen in every neighborhood.
Right.
When you start talking and networking with people, then you realize, like, hey, maybe this is something that either I need to acknowledge because this is a trigger for me,
Mm-hmm.
or B, this is something that I can utilize to make my neighborhood or my city better now that I have this information.
Right.
And then I think the last thing that you hit on is funneling. So once you channel that, those unhealthy coping behaviors, funneling it into something that, as we keep, speaking on, that it'll be beneficial to you as an individual.
Yep.
As a whole. And I loved how you kind of like brought that all together. It's like, hey, first identify the root cause, whether it was an ACE or whether, this is just something that is not good,
Right.
whether it's something, ACE from your childhood, or just something that you experience as an adult.
Right.
Because even adults, you have adverse adult experiences.
Yes, you do.
I don't know if that is a thing, but
You just made it
like
a
a
thing.
scientific thing. But for sure, as an adult, there are certain things that you may have adverse experiences as well.
Yes.
Whether that's racial profiling, whether that's just being discriminated, whether it's subconsciously or these people are consciously doing it. Those are some things that happen to adults as well that maybe they didn't experience when they were younger because they were around the people who looked like them. But when you got older, you were put in an environment where that was not the case.
Yeah.
And so those are just some of the things that you could utilize as well when you think about, hey, maybe the way that someone treated you, it was unfair, so you chose to divvy into something. But now you're trying to change and get better. But those, I really enjoyed how you kind of like explained that, and how they have like different layers to them,
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I kind of wanted to leave it off to you, or hand it off to you, to see if there's anything else when we're talking about the unhealthy coping behaviors, starting a new beginning or creating a new normal, when we're thinking about mindfulness and translating or funneling into a better and brighter total health cycle when we're talking about that mental, that physical, that emotional, and financial virtuous cycle that we're all aiming for.
Yeah, would just like to summarize so people just know what we're trying to say. Like, you might have had, a bad root. Your root may have been bad, but if you have a bad plant, you can still take that out and create a new one. So it can happen. You just have to do the work, and you have to have the right resources around you. And mindfulness is just so important, just to kind of show you what's real. You really need to know what's real in your life, because there may be some things that you're stressing about that either is not serious or is not happening at all. So by you being mindful, it makes you focus on what is going on in my present. You don't focus on future events that have never happened, or past events that really shouldn't have an effect on you anymore, unless you're trying to just face that trigger and know how to overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially I think people watching, I think the financial roots is something that most people probably do have to change, or they never really had one in the first place. So yeah, so they need to learn, okay, how do I make myself stable enough? How do I make sure that my finances are able to grow, in a healthy way? What resources do I need around? So those are things that we all can do. It's not impossible, and just take it day by day. Don't overwhelm yourself so much that it breaks you down. But don't procrastinate so much that issues keep building up and you never handle anything, and now you just got this big mountain that you have to climb. So just brick by brick, step by step, just take it at that type of pace until you're feeling strong enough to say, okay, I can handle more of these things, because you're getting stronger, because you're getting happier, because you're getting more joy in your life. Happiness can be normal too. And if we do it together, we can have happiness together. So that's what I want to get.
Awesome. Thanks for the summary, Justin. Go ahead and let the people know about all the initiatives that you have coming out and where they can find you. And then be sure to check us again next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about it's okay to seek professionals. It's no longer a taboo to ask for professional help. So go ahead and take us away, Justin.
Got you. Please continue to follow myself, on the Justin Banks on the Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Feel free to listen to the Pain to Power podcast. That's available on all platforms. And then also get ready for Mental Health for Millennials. We want to do a session every month. Just getting us the resources and love that we need around us. We're going to keep this thing rolling. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Thanks again, everyone. Be sure to follow Secure Yourself Consulting at Secure Yourself Co. on both Instagram and Facebook. And we look forward to another dynamic session for Wealth and Wellness Wednesday again next week. Bye.